I don't write, I feel tired, sad, and my heart is heavy. And when I write, concern and fear torment me." These are the words of the man whose books were translated into many languages, screened more than once but weren't understood fully. The Austrian writer Franz Kafka lived a life that was not abound with bright events, but was rich in emotional experiences. He was born on the 3rd of July, 1883, in a Jewish family that lived in Prague, which was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire at the time. His father managed to make his way in the world and became the owner of a fancy goods store. The financial stability turned this man, who was practical and primitive, but with little education, into a family tyrant, suppressing any display of will and independence by the people that surrounded him. The eternal war between Franz and his father allowed the biographers to call his life the illustration of Oedipus's complex. In his childhood, Franz never felt happy. Moreover, he was always anxious. While studying in school, he was sure that he would fail an exam and wouldn't be admitted to the next term. And as nothing like that happened, he became more and more convinced that destiny would take vengeance on him during the final exam, when everybody would come to know of his total ignorance. He started writing when he was finishing the gymnasium. Kafka wrote in German, though he knew Czech very well, French a little, and spoke Yiddish. As Kafka didn't want to become a merchant like his father, he dreamt of the job that wouldn't impede his literary activities, and that is why he chose to work in the law department of Prague University. Kafka, who was lacking in self-confidence and unable to resist somebody's aggressive advances, needed a strong and courageous friend. Max Brod, a journalist, philosopher, composer, and theater-goer, became a friend of his for life. Max managed to perceive a grain of greatness in Franz's first uncertain literary experiments. For a long time, Kafka considered himself to be ugly, was ashamed of his leanness and height, 182 centimeters, which he thought was too much. Max helped him to overcome this barrier as well. Franz started visiting cafes, pubs, and red light districts. Kafka lost his virginity at the age of 26 and described his first sensual experience as follows: "All was charming, exciting, and loathsome." In his youth, he quickly started love affairs, easily broke the relations, and didn't torment himself being left. He intended to marry almost each of his women, but as a result, he remained single. Unsuccessful attempts to marry didn't depend on a fiancé's personality. Kafka thought that marriage was a kind of vow that he had to discharge. But at the same time, he didn't want to be responsible to a family and was afraid that family bonds would not let him write. Kafka was afraid of loneliness, but parting with it frightened him even more. In 1906, Kafka was hired at an insurance company. In spite of his doctor's degree and diligence, he took up humble, low-paying jobs. But it suited Franz because his job was not important to him, and literature was always the top priority. His pen produced short stories and novellas, the novels The Castle and The Trial. He worked till 2 in the afternoon, then he slept and devoted most of his nights to writing, the sphere to which his despotic father didn't have access. This daily routine had a pernicious effect on his weak health. His migraine, insomnia, and neurosis worsened, and in 1917 he was diagnosed with tuberculosis. For 3 years, Kafka wasn't strong enough to continue his literary activities. When he was only 39, Kafka retired on a pension because of his poor health. And soon he realized the idea which he had nursed for a long time and moved to Berlin, where he was going to be a free literary man. Only his worsening of his health made him return to the native Prague he hated. Franz spent the last agonizing months of his life in a sanatorium near Vienna. Due to the excruciating pain he felt while swallowing, he could not eat at all and literally was dying of emaciation. He lost his voice, and Franz communicated with his relatives using a pencil and a piece of paper. On the 2nd of June, he was still correcting the proofs of the first chapter of his novel, America, and a day later, on the 3rd of June, 1924, the writer passed away. According to the legend, before his death he said, "Doctor, let me die, or else you are a murderer." He was buried at a Jewish cemetery in Prague. In the literary world, the death of Franz Kafka wasn't noticed. Few people knew his name because in his lifetime he published only 1/6 of the works he wrote, 41 stories. "I am not interested in literature. Literature is me. This is my flesh and blood," he wrote about himself and for himself. However, less than a year after Kafka died, his friend Max Brod broke the writer's last will demanding to destroy his manuscripts and published everything, including the most private and secret works. In this way, he revealed Kafka's name to future generations.